Spring training is well on its way, and so is the World Baseball Classic, which is getting more attention this time than any other time. And some pretty exciting games and some big names are playing, and a few other people who might be big names down the line. I can't think of a bigger name than Justin Lada of Locked On Guardians, who's going to be my guest on this episode of Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast where we talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sully. If you don't believe me, there's my lower third. You can call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade, and we're about to start my fifth season here as a host here of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On MLB. Follow the show at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. And you can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube as we're really gunning, hopefully by the end of this season, to reach 1 billion subscribers. We're several hundred million off on that. So let's keep it rolling. And you can also tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On MLB, or check out some of the other great shows on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Let's just take one completely at random. Locked On Guardians, where we are going to climb the ladder with Justin Lada, co-host of Locked On Guardians. Welcome to Locked On MLB. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to chop it up with you about all things baseball, Sully, especially the WBC just getting started.
Yeah, and you and I will talk about the Guardians and as the season progresses, because I'm pretty confident of the Guardians going to this year. I think they're actually going to have a very good year. But you know what? It's WBC time, and you know what? I have to say, for those of you who were fans of the old Sully Baseball podcast show, where I was merciless on the WBC, I've had some people kind of helped turn me around. Allison, aka the infield fly girl, has pointed out a lot of the fun parts of it. I've known many people who have attended the games, especially when they played it down the street here at Dodger Stadium or Petco Park. I've personally had more interest in this year's WBC, and I'm seeing there's more casual interest. I think of no small reason is some of the star power. And the fact that Trout is playing and some of the other big names are playing sure help it, because the first couple of times it was basically glorified spring training games. But I think there's, this is the, whichever iteration this is, and it's a problem that I don't know that. But the fact that there is more interest going on, and you're seeing some teams that have some interesting compositions, and there seems to be a desire to actually win the darn thing. I think it's making for some interesting baseball being played this spring.
It should be. I mean, the energy of the first couple of games were intense. Well, I guess the first game with Netherlands and Cuba didn't have quite the energy because it was a noon game out in Taiwan. But the last game that happened, Panama and Chinese Taipei, had just crazy stuff going on. You had horns. Cuba had horns. I like the international flair, to be honest with you. That's what gets me going is they got bands, they got cheers, they got cheerleaders from Chinese Taipei. Like, these guys are having fun. They know how to do it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the energy all these other countries bring. But I think you got a great point. Team USA, I saw a quote today saying, like, you can't show up and treat this like a spring training game. If you're committed to doing this, you're committed to playing like it's a playoff game every night. And I think that does make it more exciting to watch, like, Team USA to have that mentality versus, like you said, a glorified spring training.
We're seeing, excuse me, as we're recording this, Australia and Korea are about to play a game in Korea right now. And later this evening, Panama is going to be playing the Netherlands. Panama, as you mentioned, just beat up on Chinese Taipei, as I guess we're calling. I've always would have said Taiwan, but I guess there's reasons we're using the different moniker there. But they had a big 5-run inning there that was really was the nail in the coffin right there for Chinese Taipei. But one of the interesting things that happened in this. So yes, there are major leaguers who are in there. Yes, there are players who are big stars of their country. But then you'll have Jadiel Santamaria, I believe is how you pronounce his name, who was the big star of the game, in the big star for the Panamanian team, and he was never a major leaguer. He played some years in the Yankee organization, the Braves organization, and kind of bounced around. He bounced around the minor leagues and has been part of the Panamanian national team. And someone like him gets to have a moment in the sun. Someone like him gets to have a moment where they get to be, a name to shine in the big moment. And I think that's one of the things that appeals to this. Is that maybe, I don't know, will this mean another shot of him in the major leagues? Maybe, maybe not. But it does get someone who has been kind of out of at least the eye of American. He never made the major leagues. He was a minor leaguer in the Yankees and the Braves organization. And look at that. He gets to be a big hero in the WBC. And we're talking about him here on Locked On MLB, which, let's face it, is what every player aspires to be, is to be mentioned by their pal Sully here on Locked On MLB.
Who wouldn't? Yeah, absolutely. I think it is great. You're right. There's a lot of guys that haven't had major league success or haven't maybe gotten over to the U.S. Like they're, Cuba, and I think one of the Japan leagues has an agreement to where players can play over there. We saw that last night with Yariel Rodriguez for Cuba.
Uh-huh.
Like he was pitching great last night in that first matchup. You've had guys that hadn't been in the majors for a while, like Yoenis Cespedes is playing for Cuba. We haven't seen him in forever. Did not look fantastic. That Cuba lineup really wasn't great, to be honest, even though Netherlands, I don't think, has a whole lot of pitching. But like Jurickson Profar, not signed. I know people know him. He's still playing. Like there are guys. Remember Vladimir Valentin? Like he was a prospect for a little bit here, and he went over to the Chinese leagues, and he was the home run king over there. Like you're seeing guys like that play. Chadwick Tromp, who I think is a Braves prospect we haven't seen a whole lot of, like he was playing last night. The Netherlands infield was all shortstops, which, being in Cleveland, I know Cleveland is full of shortstops. And I'm like, man, they are living Cleveland's dream over there, because Drelton Simmons is an all-world defender at short. He's playing, third base, and Dieter Gregorius is playing first base. Like you've got guys all over that are either unheralded or haven't played in the majors in a while, or out of the majors that are still going and have great stories from other countries. I just think it's so fun to see how these teams come together, and especially the ones that aren't loaded with stars.
Well, I think the first couple of times they did the WBC, the only teams that seemed to care were Japan, Cuba, and Korea, because they were filled with players who, in some ways, were using this as an audition for major league. But it was also, there was a sense of they knew they played at a certain, the Cuban team probably. Many of those players could have been major leaguers. And you saw a bunch of players in Japan and Korea who were having players who were playing at a major league level, but were playing all out. And you saw the American team, and to a degree, like the Venezuelan team and the Dominican Republic team, of course they're holding back a little bit, especially if you're a pitcher. You're not going to be going 9 innings to try to win the WBC if you're under contract with the Mets. So the first bunch of times you saw this, it really was kind of like, okay, let's just wait for, you got the sense it's going to be, why don't we just have a tournament between Cuba and Japan every year? And, but you saw the Dominican team play with a lot of, pride and enthusiasm. And then you saw the American team recently start to do it. So, look, I don't want to be entirely American centric here, but there is a ton more enthusiasm when you see, like, the Chinese Taipei or the Netherlands have their, their cheerleaders and their horns and everything going. It does have that carnival feeling.
I love that. I mean, I think that's, if you can't get into that, enjoy it. I mean, watching Panama and Chinese or Taiwan or Chinese Taipei playing, like Chinese Taipei was down, 11-1, and they got their PA announcer out there firing the crowd. They had cheerleaders, they had chants. It was almost like a college atmosphere. And I'm like, it kind of reminds me too. I remember watching some of the games early on during the pandemic when Korea was playing and there wasn't really any other sports on for baseball. Like the atmosphere wasn't quite there for them, but like those crowds just get into it. I think that's what makes it a lot of fun. And I think you're right. Like in the past, there has been a tendency to hold back. I think like Venezuela has typically underperformed the World Baseball Classic because, maybe they are holding back. And this is the first year I think we're seeing Cuba allowing players who have defected to play. So in the past, you wouldn't have seen Luis Robert, Yohan Moncada able to play because they defected to the U.S. But now they're allowed to play over there. So that makes it a lot better for them as well, even though they didn't play as well as I thought they're going to play last night. But yeah, there's just a lot of intrigue and a lot of energy. And I'll be interested to see what the other countries do because I don't know. I feel like all the other countries with flair make this fun. And did that work out for Chinese Taipei? Not so much, but I guess we'll see how they finish in the rest of the round robin.
Well, in the first few times they did it, it just was the biggest surefire bet that it was just going to be Japan or Cuba or Japan and Korea. And it lost a little bit of its luster. But now some of those teams that look like longer shots for a bet may actually pull it off. And by the way, if you're looking to make any bets, may I recommend you go to FanDuel. The NBA season's at the midway point. It's a perfect time to download the FanDuel app. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on anything from the money line, point scores, to three-pointers drained. Plus, FanDuel lets you even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss out the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. The copy just said the NBA, but I like to make it sound more some gravitas there. One of the things, excuse me, as I itch my nose, my allergies are kicking in. Very windy day here in Los Angeles. One of the things that could really happen and make the WBC, interesting for beyond just the national pride and some of the players, as we mentioned, it could be an early sort of a showcase for some of the international players. MLB.com had a great article written by Michael Clare about the Jung-Hoo Lee, who is a left-handed wizard with the bat from the South Korea team. And there's there's just some great highlights, including one of him basically getting out of the way of an inside pitch, swinging and getting the hit out of it. I mean, he looks like he's one of those people who can just completely control the field, control the bat, kind of in that way that, not that he physically looks like this person, but has that sort of baseball IQ and ability to work the whole field like Tony Gwynn did during his peak. They mentioned that he is a sort of a Joe DiMaggio-esque. The fact that DiMaggio had as many home runs as he did strikeouts in his career, that it was just impossible to strike out. And this guy looks like someone that he's just going to put the ball in play no matter what. And he's part of the Korean team. And they're playing Australia right now as we're recording this podcast. And, he is someone who could very well be he could very well be a star in the United States, or a star in Major League Baseball. I don't want to take the Blue Jays out of the running. But, one of the things, like a bowl game or like the Final Four in the NCAA, one of the things that could help, bring a little more cachet to the WBC for the casual fans is the chance to see some of these big stars for the first time. I mean, Ichiro made his first appearance for American audiences at the WBC. Or not Ichiro. Oh God. Oh,
Otani.
oh, thank you, Otani.
Yeah.
I meant to say Otani, and it came out as Ichiro. I'm sorry, and please throw your hate email at me.
Oh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But I'm really, I would love to see that happen as well. With the Cuban team and with some of the other high profile teams as well.
Yeah, like Japan, especially, you're going to have the first time. I think most people are going to see Roki Sasaki. The first time you're going to see Murakami, who is really good. Like I think Murakami hit a home run off Otani in practice a few days ago. Like Otani, I think a few weeks ago was saying like I'm not even the best player on that team. Like there's guys that are better than me on there. And I don't know if Shohei Otani, even if he's being modest, says someone's better than him or as good as him, that's a big deal. Like Shohei Otani is a god for baseball. So if he's saying someone is better than him, and for your Red Sox, you'll get to see Yoshida play a little bit early on. I think is playing left field for Matsaki Yoshida. That was the guy the Red Sox signed, right? He's playing for Team Japan. So I don't know how you're feeling about that with your Red Sox and him playing in Team Japan after that investment in him. But the first time you'll get to see him in really competitive games too.
Well, look at I'm less worried about that right now. Hopefully, he could get hurt just as well in spring training. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, the biggest thing that can happen if this thing works out well. I mean, there are teams that are from already baseball crazed countries. So we mentioned Japan, we mentioned Korea, Cuba, the Dominican Republic. They're all, they all have teams from countries that are just, wild about baseball. And, I have all the teams that sort of qualified for even the pool stage. You had Canada, Colombia, there are Colombia, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Panama, Nicaragua. Then you have the Asian teams like China, Chinese Taipei, Japan, South Korea, Australia. But I'm fascinated by Team Israel, Team Italy, Team Netherlands includes Curacao as well, but Team Britain, Team Czech Republic. I would love to see teams, stars emerge from some of those teams, and maybe some of them got some exposure being played in front of scouts or everything. But like the best thing could happen to the WBC, and the thing that when Bud Selig initiated it was to try to, they obviously wanted to have what the World Cup is in soccer, what the Olympic medal is in hockey and in basketball. You're never going to have that in baseball with the Olympics because the Summer Olympics are in the middle of the season. No one's going to shut down the pennant race so you can win a gold medal. But I would love to see a Czech baseball star, a British baseball star, a star from Italy. I mean, my God, if you had I've been saying for years, if the Red Sox developed a native from Dublin to make the team, you couldn't keep that jersey on the shelf, even if there was a utility infielder. And I think that to make the national star, we see national stars from other countries when they come to the United, come play Major League Baseball, whether it's in the Dominican Republic or, whether it's in, Mexico or whether it's in Venezuela. We've seen it in Korea, we've seen it in Japan. I'd love to see it expand that to Europe. I'd love to be able to see, the great Italian star, and then eventually, stars from Africa and stars from the Middle East. I mean, these are, stars from India. That's what that John Hamm movie was about, that underrated John Hamm movie. I think that it's that's what I'm hoping to see happen here. And I think it's going to be a lot of the same faces we see towards the end. But I would love it if there was, Team Italy or Team Czech, making its way to the majors or making its way to the finals.
And that's really what it's about too, is kind of growing the game. Like everyone's playing here for pride. Like you said, there are guys with, multi-million-dollar contracts who are playing, and it's a bit more of a risk, but you've got the guys who like the Czech Republic, all of those guys have day jobs, right? You have firefighters and teachers, and that's like interesting. Those guys are all going out and playing on a team, and they're gonna like have a chance to play Shohei Ohtani. Like he might be pitching to a guy that's gonna go teach fifth grade geography next week. That's wild. You go back and tell your kids that story. But, if you go back and you get a hit off him, or maybe you beat Japan, or maybe you pull off a win, like think of all the people in your country you can get excited about baseball. And maybe someone, is inspired by that and starts playing because, a lot of these countries, their top sport is soccer, or maybe it's, I'm trying to think of the other, what's the baseball equivalent over there with the flat bat? Cricket, yeah. Maybe it's cricket. Maybe they'll try out baseball because they're seeing the Czech Republic guys, win a game against Japan. It's pretty unlikely, but they could. There's a lot of great stories in this, and the Netherlands has already won. The fact they won a game already, I think they're kind of like upset darlings. Great Britain, I think there's been some chatter that Great Britain is like they want to play Team USA. They're ready, and there are some people who think they could pull off an upset. Pool C is pretty deep. We'll see about that. Team Israel was a great story last time, so who knows what they could do. That's also a very tough ask. You only get 2 teams out of each pool, and these pools are incredibly deep.
By the way, I just want to give a shout out to Mark Blakemore, my buddy in London, who is a native of Britain, who's become a big baseball fan. I met when I was out in London in 2016. I got to meet with several baseball fans, including members of the world of the British Baseball Federation. They're trying to make it grow there. It's in its infancy there, but bit by bit, get baseball going there in Great Britain. I'll tell you another thing I find interesting. Beyond it being a potential, showcase for, national pride and possible gaining interest in certain countries and showing off some of the big stars, it also can be a training ground for careers beyond playing. The manager of Team Puerto Rico is Yadier Molina, who was, obviously all-time beloved St. Louis Cardinal. Whether or not he's going to make the Hall of Fame is up for debate. I think he has an interesting case. I don't think it's a lock, but he certainly is someone who's beloved St. Louis Cardinal, of their number retired in St. Louis, and maybe add to his resume by eventually becoming the manager of the Cardinals or somebody. Well, he is getting that managerial experience, at least his first round of it, here in the World Baseball Classic. And I don't think that's a small thing. Yes, I mean, there's been a lot of poo-pooing about the managerial's importance by people who are, simply analytically driven. But I completely think that having the experience of juggling a pitching staff, making the on-field decisions beyond just what is being faxed to you from the front office. I just dated myself by saying faxed. But having that experience, and certainly for someone like Molina, who has all the respect of the world all throughout baseball, no matter where it is, I think I think he's eventually going to be a major league manager. And it would be interesting to see if this was step one towards that direction.
Yeah, that is an interesting story. I didn't think about that until you brought that up. I mean, the game management's different. Like there are rules about how many pitches you can throw, and there are teams that are setting guidelines out there. So maybe some of that stuff's made for the managers, but really I think it's going to be these guys to pull in the same direction, right? Like these guys they're all from the same country and they're all playing for the same reason. Obviously it's pride, but I don't know, just Team USA, Mark DeRosa is a first-time manager too. He's been talked about for different managerial jobs in Major League Baseball. Hasn't gotten one yet. This is his first chance. So, is he going to be looked at as a guy? Can he pull, all these stars, Mookie Betts, Mike Trout? I guess it's not hard to manage Mike Trout, right? He's pretty easygoing, but all those guys in that roster, can you pull them all together? Can you get them to play as one versus individual superstars? Did you know who the manager is for Team Israel, by the way? I didn't know this until now.
I did not know, no.
It is Ian Kinsler. How about that?
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, he is the manager over at Team Israel. That's actually a more interesting roster than I thought originally. So you have a good point. There's a lot of first-time managers, and it'll be interesting to see how he gets these guys on the same page and kind of blends the roster together. I mean, there's a lot of talk about lineup construction and, where Mookie Betts is going to lead off for Team USA. Like, How do you put the right lineup together? How are you going to get guys to perform in early season when it's not typical? So you're right. There'll be a lot of stuff based off of maybe managerial decisions too.
Manager of Team Canada. Do you know who it is?
I do not off the top of my head. Wow.
Former Toronto Blue Jays star Ernie Whitt, who was a
Okay.
big star I remember Ernie Whitt very, very well when he was a manager of the when he was a catcher for the first really great Toronto Blue Jays team. Of course, who's managing Team Italy?
Mike Piazza.
Mike Piazza.
That'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
That'll be fun. I mean, look at I hope I was a big Piazza fan when he was a player. I have no idea what he's like as a human being. He seems like, he certainly was beloved in New York when I lived in New York. And I would like to see Piazza maybe manage. What the heck? Why not? Who can root against Mike Piazza? I'm sure someone can and everything like that. I don't know who the manager of Great Britain's team is. It's Drew Spencer.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's I had to see if my friend Mark Blakemore was one of the coaches or not, because maybe he would have qualified there. The Netherlands manager,
Hensley Mullins, yeah.
Hensley Mullins, and I've been screaming. And by the way, everyone, fans of this podcast, line up the drinks, start doing the shots. I've been screaming about Bruce Bochy's lieutenants deserve a managerial job, and right at the front of the line, Hensley Mullins and Roberto Kelly should be managers in Major League Baseball. And Hensley Mullins is managing the World Baseball Classic team, and that's great. He should have a managerial job in the majors. By the way, who is the Panamanian manager? I gotta look at it. I gotta look that up.
Luis Ortiz.
Luis Ortiz. Okay, so it's not Roberto Kelly, who I also believe should be a major league manager, not just for his wonderful career, was a multiple All-Star, but was a shot. Bruce Bochy's lieutenant. Yeah, we're here with Justin Lada. Justin, climb the Justin Lada. Hey, Justin, and you will be on here in the regular season. We'll talk all things Cleveland baseball and everything like that. Want to get a prediction? I mean, look, at the easy pick is to take someone like, Japan or Cuba or Dominican Republic. Does Team USA have a legit shot at this? And who of the remaining teams do you think is going to be if you will, a wild card?
I mean, Team USA's got a shot. Their lineup is as loaded as anybody's, right? So I think they're going to be fine. Though I don't want to say it's going to be easy for them to get out of pool play, but I think Great Britain, unfortunately, is going to be a little overmatched. Mexico is really good. So I think USA should get out of pool play. I'm a nerd. I did a bracket. It's March. It's time for brackets. I actually have Venezuela beating Team USA in the quarterfinals. So Venezuela is really good. And like I said, they have a history of kind of underperforming in the tournament. So we'll see how that goes. But I think Venezuela's roster is really good. Mexico's roster is really good. I do think Dominican Republic's going to wind up winning, and I just feel like they're too good. I actually have the Dominican Republic and Venezuela facing off in the finals. So that would be a lot of fun because those two countries have a lot of players.
Who do you have Venezuela winning the semifinals against?
In the semifinals over Team Japan. I know that's a tough one. I think Venezuela's can do it. I mean, Japan is really good. They're stacked, and they have some of the best players. But if Venezuela can really pull this thing together like they haven't been able to in years past, I think they're going to – I mean, that roster is just – you seen the outfield? I mean, you've got Ronald Acuna. You've got Anthony Santander, Miguel Cabrera. This could be Miguel Cabrera's, major last run if he has a great time out there. You got Luis Ariz, Jose Altuve, Sal Perez. You've got a lot of good – their pitching staff is as good as anybody. It's Hazel Zasardo, Pablo Lopez – it's a good roster. So I like you said, we'll see if that coaching staff can kind of pull them together.
And I haven't done all the analysis you. A lot of this is just gut check and just sort of looking at things and looking at past history and everything. if I were going to go FanDuel and put my money on the World Baseball Classic Championship, I'm going Japan. I think Japan is going to put it together. I think they're going to have. I think they're loaded with good players. I think they're loaded with stars, but I also think they're loaded with. They always seem to do well for that reason of wanting for some of the players. This is their chance to either get a big contract in NPR. They're in their league in Japan, or to post and to be the next Ichiro or Hideki Matsui or Shohei Ohtani or Hideo Nomo. So I'm gonna pick Japan until proven differently.
That's fair.
I mean, you're right. I mean, like Venezuela, Dominican Republic are always stacked. There's always people on the Cuban teams who are using this as their World Series. And Korea obviously has a lot of talent. Netherlands obviously has a lot of talent. Team USA obviously has a lot of talent. And if any one of those win, there's no way any of us can be shocked. I'm just going to pick Japan until proven otherwise.
That's fair. I mean, hey, don't listen to me. I have Chinese Taipei going to the semifinals, and they already lost their first game badly. So I might not know as much about this as I sound like.
Well, whenever the more analysis you do in a sport and in a tournament is almost guaranteed to make your picks terrible. I teach special education here in Pasadena, and I was having kids pick the Super Bowl. And I have one of these kids who's on the spectrum in my class who doesn't at all follow football. He got almost every single playoff game right, including the Super Bowl. And he doesn't follow football. I think he was just pointing at the helmets. One year, I did my picks against our fish. I had our fish in a bowl, and I put the logo of each team on either side, whichever one he swam towards was his pick. Fish beat me.
You never know.
All of my analysis was bested by a fish. Just so you know.
We're not as smart as we all think we are, right?
I flushed that fish down the toilet.
Wow, that's a hard way to go. I think this is why I've never won a fantasy baseball league, despite the fact that I've been running a league for 11 years. I've never won a fantasy baseball league.
And you know always wins? The person who doesn't follow it and made like 3 moves all year.
Yep.
In fact, I may do fantasy baseball this year and lock my team at the beginning and check up on them in September and watch. I'll run away with the league. I will run away with the league.
I'm much better at fantasy football, and I don't really watch a whole lot of football. So like that tracks. I've won fantasy football leagues. I've never won a fantasy baseball league.
The one league I ever won, hockey. I won a fantasy hockey league. I don't follow hockey. I won the league up against a bunch of people from Massachusetts and Canada. That's like beating the Italians at opera. By the way,
or it's like
by the way, I must give credit where credit is due. That line was I stole that line from my friend Lynn Harris. So Lynn Harris, I stole that line from you because she was on a women's hockey team that beat a Canadian team, and she said that was like beating the Italians at opera. I have to give credit. I said, where did I come up with that? Oh, Lynn said it. So there you go. I have to footnote. I inadvertently stole a joke from my friend Lynn, and there you go. You can follow her at Harris Linda on Twitter. Justin Lada, tell people where they can follow your show.
We are on YouTube, Locked On Guardians, and Locked On Guardians at anywhere you get podcasts. We are just out there, or you can follow us on Twitter at Locked Guardians so you never miss an update.
Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. Your second listen, obviously make it Locked On Guardians. But for your third listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Just like we should have just segued right into that. You can win your league. Don't listen to us to win your league. Listen to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies, including holding up a logo at either end of a fishbowl. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Oh boy, I wonder if us talking about the futility of fantasy analysis was the best way to segue into Locked On Fantasy Baseball. No, it's just that Justin and I are a couple of jarheads. All right, hey, follow our show at Locked On MLB Pods, Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Spanning the globe for the World Baseball Classic. There you go, doing the Wide World of Sports opening.
I love it.
He is Justin Lada, who represents the thrill of victory. I'm your pal Sully. I'm the agony of defeat falling down the ski jump. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On MLB.